Hi, it's Sam from Little Pear Tree here, and I'm here to do my second tutorial for Letraset. This time I'm going to concentrate on skin. So first of all with skin is colours. So first of all, for my darkest colour, for my shadow areas, I use coral. Then to bring it down a bit, I use Sunkissed pink. Then after that is blush. And after that is Ivory. Now there are other skin combinations I use, but this is my go-to skin combination. So this is the one I'm going to show you today. I also will sometimes use a bit of antique pink and a bit of baby pink for the cheeks. Although recently I've started using the Dusky rose and the baby pink because it doesn't make the cheeks quite as red, but that was always my go-to combination. This is the combination I've started using recently. So it's Dusky rose and baby pink, so that's probably what I'm going to use today. First of all, as some of you may already know, I colour dark to light. So I will go for my darkest colour out of the 4 colours that I've got for the skin, and that will be my coral. So I always, generally when I'm colouring, turn my page to colour the areas that I want. The only real exception to that is the skin when I'm doing under the hairline. I tend to sort of keep it this way up so I can visualise more where the shadows would be. So with my darkest colour, I'm literally just going to go in, and I'm just, as you can see, lightly flicking the colour. You have to excuse where I'm going over the lines a bit. Hopefully I don't normally go over the lines, not that that's a problem, but I don't normally go over the lines. But I'm sitting back a bit further than I would normally so that you can get everything in shot, whereas normally I am hunched right over my images as I'm colouring them. Okay, so I also said in the hints and tips that I work in sections. Now the face you can't section off. If I'd done half a face and then done the other half, you'd probably get some sort of line in the middle. It'd be very difficult to blend it out. So basically you need to try and do her whole face while everything is as wet as possible. And again, as you can see, flicks, and I'm not going to go all the way down. And the idea with the flicks as well is just really lightly. You don't have to really push hard. Just really nice and light. Of course this will have a bit of shadow around it. Really nice and lightly, and then I'll put a bit more up here. And you're just flicking your pen as lightly as you can. Okay. And then I'll go for my next lightest colour, working back from the darkest, and again start where you finished off and just gentle flicks. And as you flick over, you can see, well, I don't know if you can see it on the video, but as I flick over you can still see that line between the two. So then I go back over the line until I've pretty much blended it out. See how I'm doing that? So basically I'm going all over the colour from top to bottom and extending it out a bit further, and then I'm going all the way over the line to try and blend it in. So again, as you can see, all the way over the line from top to bottom, so it's darkening everything down, and we've still got a bit of a line showing here, so you go over just that line now to try and start smoothing it out. Again, you don't have to at this stage get it all out completely smooth. I don't go so I've done it dark and then I'm going over it with the lighter, going over all of the dark with the lighter and past it. Then the line that's left I'm blending out, but I'm only going just over the line between the darker and the lighter one, not all the way over again, because I don't want to keep darkening down every part of the top bit, otherwise I will continuously still have that same line there. So the idea, and this is the bit where I do start turning it again, so the idea is you're blending it without darkening it too much. So flicking over, going a bit further, and then going back over to blend in that line. And we'll just extend the line down a bit further. And then for this one. And again, you see how it's just light flicking motions. Try and keep it light. The idea is you're not scribbling out the colour, you're not trying really hard to get the colour on the paper, you are trying to lay down a little bit of ink and then push the ink around on the paper. That's what you're trying to do. So think of it as, don't push down, think of it as being as light as you possibly can. So even when I'm doing thick areas, that is very light. I'm not doing that, I'm very light. Also, think of it as you're pushing the ink around. If you're pushing down, you're pushing the ink down into the paper, you're not going to push it around. If you're very lightly doing it like that, you're pushing it around, and that's what creates the blend. So at this stage as well now, I might put some shape in for a nose if I want to do that, and of course you don't have to. Some images come with the noses on, so if they had the lines there, you'd put a little bit of this second darkest colour, you'd shade it down the sides, and if they haven't got a nose like this and you feel like drawing one in, go ahead. It might be a little bit darker under her chin, like under her mouth, and you might have it a little bit darker under her eyes. I've probably stopped and talked too long now, and what I've laid down already is probably a bit dry, but she may look a bit scary at the moment, but I promise you that'll all blend out. So now I'm on to my next colour, so that's the blush. Now I haven't got a fine nib on this, and generally I would if the face was smaller. On these characters, which is a wonderful image by Miran, they have quite big faces, so you don't need to have a fine nib on the blush unless you really want to. But basically I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to go over everything. I hope I can still blend it out, because I hope I haven't left it too long. So you're going to go over everything from all the way at the top to all the way down and past, and blend any line out that you've got. Try and always do the same pattern. So if you've done the left side first, go back to the left side, because obviously your drying times are going to work in that way. So here we go again, and we'll extend it a bit further down the chin. Of course, the reason I didn't go all the way down the bottom with the darker one is I wouldn't necessarily have a shade all the way around it. So it's just to give that idea of depth and roundness. I've graduated the shadows out. And again, even though I'm using the bigger nib, as you can see, it's still a flicking motion. It's still light. I'm still trying to move the ink around the paper. And I'm not filling in all the gaps, as you can see. I'm just going over everywhere that had this colour, the next darkest colour on it. I'm just going over that and extending it a little bit further. Or perhaps like that, adding it in some new places. When it comes to doing noses, you generally want to put it out a bit further than where you actually want it, because as you blend it, the lines will move in together. So if I put it exactly where I wanted it, by the time I've blended it, it would then move into the middle and her nose would look non-existent. So you kind of have to remember that the ink will move and the ink will spread to some degree, because that's the idea, that's what you're doing, you're blending it. Okay, so now on to my lightest colour, which is the Ivory. Now the transition between the Ivory and the blush is quite a big one, and sometimes it can take a bit of blending in. Like I say, it doesn't really help where I stop to talk, because you should ideally be working with it as wet as possible. Okay, and I'm literally now, because this is my lightest colour, and my Ivory is what I use as my blender as such, because it is my lighter colour, that means I am going to go all over with this. But again, I'm still following the lines, you see. I've not just gone and coloured in all of her face ivory, which I could possibly do because I want it all ivory. Because what happens then is, all the lines that you've been working in, as much as they all look like they're gone now, they are still there, and there is still a base of colour underneath it all for you. And if I all of a sudden just came in and just coloured all over all of it like that, you would lose it all. So this shape down her nose, because obviously as well, like I said, the more you colour over itself, as you can see, that's darkening down the side of her nose. So if I all of a sudden went that way across it, I'd lose the definition on her nose, or I'd lose the definition under her eyes, or I'd lose something else that I've put in there, because I've gone from going in the direction so that it looks right and everything's in the right place, to going like that, and it would just cover it over. Yes, it'll cover the area quicker, but you would lose your definition. So basically I'm just pushing all the colour over, mixing it all around, following it in the same way that I was before. So I'd go round for the cheeks, down round here, and then the nose, and then I'm going to just really lightly brush it over the nose, and then just spread the colour at the top so that there's no definite line. Okay. And the reason I colour it very lightly is obviously, generally, wherever your light's coming from, you will have more light on the nose because it's prominent from the face and it sticks out. So now I've laid it all down, and you've lost a lot of the definition now, you notice, and it might look a bit what I call muddy, although it doesn't look as bad when it's skin colours. Now's the time we're going to go back in and you're going to define stuff a bit more, so you're going to add more colour. So basically I'm going in with my coral again, which this time looks a bit scary and harsh. And what I'm doing is, and you'll get it more if you've got like one strand of hair coming down, is I'm following the shape of the hair. So I'm not just shading underneath it now, I am following the shape of the hair, because any shadows would fall in that same shape. And again, just really lightly. Okay, sorry about that, my camera is overheated. I've tried to find a way that I can turn the screen off on the back, because I think that's what's making it overheat, but I can't. So you've missed a tiny bit of me adding this shade in. I'm now having to try and video from my phone, which obviously isn't ideal. And more importantly, while I've stopped to try and set my phone up, this has all dried a bit more than I'd actually like it to. So it won't necessarily be as easy to blend, but we will do what we can. I couldn't leave the image to start when my camera's cooled down, because of course it defeats the object of trying to work when your ink's wet. This time round we're trying to not blend it as much as we did the first time round, because that was giving us our base colours. But at the same time as we don't want to blend it out as much, we still don't want to end up with blend lines in it that can possibly make the image look a bit harsh. So anyway, you get a blend line, try and shade it out. Now this time again I've done the side, but her nose wouldn't all be the same colour and it won't all be light. There will be some defining darkness as it goes up into the centre bit. So I've shaded out, but now I will just soften that darker line. So we don't need the harsh dark line, and at the same time as I'm softening it, it's spreading into the nose, so it's giving a bit more colour there. and I'm still pushing it out, so it's giving it a bit more colour there. And then we've got the lightest colour, where basically this time I am literally going to fill in the gaps. So I'm not going to go all the way over everything, because if I go all the way over everything again, it does what I call muddy it. And like I said on my last video, for my last colour that I lay down is in effect my blender, and on the last or second from last layers, or anything that isn't the first layer basically, I don't blend it again all over, because that's what lays down your base colour, and that's what can end up muddying it into each other. If you're struggling to shade out the colour, I might go a bit further in to try and pull some of the colour across. So you're basically then going into here and taking some of the colour from here and pushing it across to get rid of the line, because it's quite a big jump from the ivory to the blush. But at the end of the day, the idea is you're just filling it in so the white doesn't look as harsh, but still leaving it to a degree. Okay, now at this stage, if I want to add some colouring for the cheeks, I will. So the pinkest part of her cheek will be to the edge of her face. And then, so that was my Dusky Rose, and now I'm just flicking over with my baby pink. Generally get some pinkness under the cheeks. And again with this side, blending it out. So we've got a nice basis for some pink cheeks there, but of course you can take that out further and blend it in further, which we'll do in a second, because now I'm going to go around again. Now this time I'm not going as far, because I just want to add a bit of definition so it actually does look like it's the hairs casting a shadow rather than just a general shadow under the hairline. So I'm just kind of going up into the hair, but perhaps not going as far as I did before, just to define it a bit. And again around the cheeks, just again, I mean under this bit here it'd be a bit darker, definitely under where there's hair going over her face it'd be a bit darker, but I won't go all the way down again. And again really lightly on her nose, but I might not go up as high this time because I don't need it defined up as high. Again, back to your Sunkissed pink. So if you've noticed, it's always the same colours in the same order over and over again, and basically all you're doing is you're building up colour. Anyone that thinks you just lay down the first layer and that's it, you're done dusted and you're going to get your best finish, it's, well, I certainly can't find a way to make that work. It definitely is a case of laying down a good lot of base colours, then blending it all in, and then laying down each of your other colours after that, again and again and again, to build up the definition in the areas you want the definition. See how lightly I'm going over now, and you can definitely see I'm not doing it as dark or as heavy as I was the first few times, pulling that cheek colour out a bit. And remember what I said in my hints and tips as well, about always go darker than what you want or think, because once your alcohol evaporates, and that goes for any alcohol marker, once your alcohol evaporates, it will all get lighter. So her face is looking this dark now, but it will get lighter. Bearing in mind you can have some harsh shadows, but also bearing in mind on the majority area of any skin, you actually want it all to be blended in nice and smoothly. That's it basically. Just keep adding your shadows and your shading until you're happy, and then you can go on to the next areas.